Imagine this. It's 9 p.m. on a Tuesday in Manhattan, and Sarah is still at her desk in a gleaming corporate tower, finishing a presentation that isn't even hers. Her colleague dumped it on her that morning with a sheepish smile and a, "You're so good at this stuff." Meanwhile, 3 floors down, her friend Marcus just left the office at 5:30 sharp after politely declining the exact same request. Guess who's respected more by their boss? Guess who's getting promoted next month? Here's the brutal truth. It's not the person burning the midnight oil out of misplaced kindness. We've all heard that beautiful saying, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." Sounds poetic, inspiring even. But here's what nobody tells you: most of us are already on fire, and we don't even realize we're holding the matches. In our Instagram perfect world where being nice gets you likes and being helpful makes you feel worthy, we've turned kindness into a weapon against ourselves. The ancient Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who literally ruled an empire while maintaining his inner peace, understood something we've forgotten. He knew that your first duty isn't to everyone else, it's to your own well-being. Not because you're selfish, but because you can't genuinely help anyone when you're running on empty, resentful, and burned out. Think about the people in your life right now. There's probably someone who's always available, always saying yes, always putting everyone else first. How do people treat that person? Are they invited to the fun stuff or just called when there's work to be done? Are they respected and valued or taken for granted? The uncomfortable truth is that our culture has created a twisted dynamic where the most giving people often end up feeling the most alone. This isn't just about being nice. It's about survival in a world that will gladly consume every ounce of energy you're willing to give. From the friend who only texts when they need something, to the family member who expects you to drop everything for their latest crisis, to the coworker who somehow never has to stay late because you're so reliable. The people-pleaser trap is everywhere. But here's the thing about traps. Once you see them, you can avoid them. The Stoics weren't cold or heartless. They were strategic. They understood that true kindness requires wisdom, boundaries, and yes, sometimes saying no. They knew that helping others is beautiful, but destroying yourself in the process helps no one. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, which we now call Meditations, that maintaining your inner peace while contributing positively to others' lives is the ultimate goal. Notice he said, maintaining your inner peace first, because without that foundation, everything else crumbles. Today, we're going to explore the 4 hidden ways that unchecked kindness is sabotaging your life, and more importantly, how to reclaim your power without losing your heart. This isn't about becoming selfish, it's about becoming wise. It's about learning to give from a place of strength, not desperation. Because the world needs your kindness, but it needs you to survive and thrive while giving it. 1. Why you can't help others when you're burned out. Let me tell you about 2 neighbors in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. Maria lives in a beautiful brownstone on the corner. Her garden is absolutely stunning. Every spring, neighbors stop to admire her roses, her perfectly manicured lawn, and the way her vegetables seem to grow twice as big as everyone else's. She's generous too, always sharing her extra tomatoes and herbs with the whole block. People actually plan their evening walks to pass by her house because it's such a joy to see. Then there's Jennifer, who lives 3 houses down. Jennifer's yard? Well, let's just say the city has sent a few polite letters about the overgrown grass and the way her fence is slowly falling apart. Here's the thing, though, Jennifer isn't lazy or uncaring. She's actually the most helpful person on the entire street. She's the one who waters plants when people go out of town, walks dogs when neighbors are sick, organizes the block parties, coordinates the neighborhood watch, helps elderly Mrs. Patterson with her groceries every Tuesday, and somehow always ends up being the person who handles the homeowners association drama that nobody else wants to deal with. Jennifer is always, and I mean always, taking care of everyone else's needs. So why does her own life look like a complete disaster zone? This is the gardener's dilemma that Marcus Aurelius would have recognized immediately. Maria understood something profound about sustainable kindness. You have to tend your own garden first. Not because you're selfish, but because a thriving garden produces surplus that you can actually share. When Maria's tomatoes are overflowing, she genuinely enjoys giving them away because she has more than enough. When her roses are blooming beautifully, she feels proud to share cuttings with neighbors. Her generosity comes from abundance, not scarcity. Jennifer, despite her beautiful heart and genuinely good intentions, was giving from a place of depletion. She was literally giving away time, energy, and resources she didn't have. Every hour she spent organizing someone else's life was an hour her own life fell further behind. Every dollar she lent to neighbors in need was a dollar she couldn't put toward fixing her own fence. She was robbing her future self to help people in the present moment, and the math just doesn't work long term. Think about your own life right now. When was the last time you said yes to helping someone when you were already exhausted? When did you last volunteer for something when your own to-do list was already overwhelming? If you're like most people, it was probably this week. Maybe even today. We've been conditioned to believe that saying no makes us bad people, so we keep saying yes even when we're running on fumes. Here's what happens in your brain and body when you're constantly giving from an empty tank. Your stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline stay elevated because you're always in crisis mode, always rushing to meet someone else's urgent deadline or emergency. Your decision-making gets cloudy because your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, gets overwhelmed when you're chronically stressed. Sleep becomes elusive because your mind races with all the commitments you've made and all the people you're worried about disappointing. Ironically, the quality of help you provide starts to decline dramatically. You become that friend who shows up late because you overcommit and tried to squeeze in one more favor before arriving. You give distracted advice because you're mentally juggling 12 other people's problems while they're talking to you. You make promises you can't keep because you've completely lost track of your own capacity and limitations. You start making mistakes that create more work for everyone involved. I know a guy in Miami named Carlos who learned this lesson the hard way. Carlos worked in tech support at a growing startup and was known throughout the company as the person who would take on anyone's weekend emergency, cover anyone's shift, help anyone move apartments, debug anyone's code problems, and even help coworkers' kids with their computer science homework. Sounds like a great guy, right? He absolutely was. Carlos had a genuinely generous heart and found real satisfaction in solving problems for people. But Carlos was also the guy who missed his own daughter's soccer games because he was fixing someone else's computer crisis that absolutely couldn't wait until Monday. He was the guy who couldn't afford his own family vacation because he kept lending money to friends and coworkers who really needed it this time and would definitely pay him back next month. He was the guy whose own projects at work started falling behind because he was always dropping everything to help other people with theirs. Carlos was burning himself out trying to be everyone's hero, and the tragic irony was that he was becoming less and less able to actually help anyone effectively. His own work performance started slipping, which meant he was less secure in his job, which made him more anxious, which made him say yes to even more requests because he was desperately trying to prove his value. It was a vicious cycle that nearly cost him his marriage, his health, and ironically, the respect of the very people he was trying so hard to help. The Stoics had a term for this kind of wisdom. They called it understanding preferred indifference. Basically, some things are naturally preferable to others, and your own well-being is naturally preferable to exhausting yourself for others. This isn't selfishness, it's basic mathematics. You literally cannot give what you don't have. You can't lend money you don't possess, you can't give time you've already spent, and you can't provide emotional support when you're emotionally bankrupt yourself. Marcus Aurelius, who had the weight of an entire empire on his shoulders, dealt with plagues, wars, political intrigue, and family drama that would make modern reality TV look tame. Yet he wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." He understood that maintaining your inner resources isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential for being able to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. When you're constantly running on empty, your help often creates more problems than it solves. You make mistakes because you're tired and your judgment is impaired. You overcommit because you've lost track of your actual limits and capabilities. You become resentful because you're giving more than you can sustain, and that resentment seeps into your interactions whether you realize it or not. People can sense when your help comes with hidden strings of martyrdom attached. Eventually, you burn out completely, which means you can't help anyone at all. You become the person who has to cancel at the last minute, who stops answering their phone, who withdraws from relationships because you're too exhausted to maintain them. The very people you were trying so hard to help end up losing your support entirely because you gave too much too fast instead of giving sustainably over time. But here's the beautiful part: when you start taking care of yourself first, something genuinely magical happens. Like Maria's garden, your life starts producing surplus. You have energy left over after meeting your own needs. You make better decisions because your mind is clear and well-rested. You give better advice because you're not distracted by your own unmet needs and mounting stress. You become genuinely helpful instead of frantically busy. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or cold. It means becoming strategic and sustainable about your kindness. It means recognizing that self-care isn't selfish, it's the foundation that makes genuine generosity possible. When you're well-rested, financially stable, emotionally balanced, and mentally clear, you can help others from a place of abundance instead of desperation. Your help becomes a gift instead of a burden, both for you and for the people you're helping. 2. Why people forget your help and how to give anyway. Picture this scene from downtown Seattle. It's a rainy Tuesday morning, and David is sitting in his favorite coffee shop on Pine Street, staring at his phone in disbelief. 6 months ago, he spent 3 weekends helping his coworker Jake move into a new apartment, complete with disassembling furniture, loading a U-Haul, and even buying pizza for the whole crew. He took time away from his own family, threw out his back lifting Jake's ridiculously heavy couch, and never asked for anything in return. Fast forward to last week, when David mentioned he was moving and could use some help. Jake's response? "Oh man, I wish I could, but I'm super busy that weekend. Maybe try posting on Facebook." David feels like he's been punched in the gut. Not because he was keeping score, but because the complete lack of recognition for what he'd done felt like a slap in the face. How could Jake have forgotten so quickly? How could someone be so oblivious to the effort David had put in? This is the harsh reality of what the ancient Stoics understood about human nature. Reciprocity has an expiration date, and that expiration date is usually much shorter than we expect. Here's what's happening psychologically when people forget your help. The human brain is wired to adapt quickly to new circumstances. It's called hedonic adaptation. When you help someone solve a problem, their brain literally adjusts to their new, improved situation and treats it as the new normal within weeks or even days. The relief they felt when you helped them move, or fixed their computer, or listened to them vent about their relationship drama becomes their baseline. They're not being malicious or intentionally ungrateful. Their brain has simply moved on to whatever the next problem or concern is. Think about it in your own life. Remember the last time someone helped you with something significant. How often do you think about that help now? How vivid is your memory of exactly what they did and how much time it took them? If you're honest, it probably doesn't occupy much mental real estate anymore. That's not because you're a bad person, it's because that's how human memory and attention work. We're constantly focused on our current challenges, not past solutions. I know a woman in Boston named Rachel who learned this lesson in the most painful way possible. Rachel worked in marketing and had a colleague named Amy who was going through a brutal divorce. For 6 months, Rachel was Amy's emotional support system. She listened to hours of venting phone calls, covered for Amy when she needed to leave work early for lawyer meetings, helped her find a new apartment, and even lent her money for the security deposit. Rachel genuinely cared about Amy and wanted to help her get through this difficult time. Then Rachel's own life imploded. Her father was diagnosed with cancer, and she was trying to balance work with driving him to chemotherapy appointments and managing his medical care. She was emotionally and physically exhausted, and she really needed some support from her friends and colleagues. When she reached out to Amy, expecting at least some of the same emotional support she'd provided, Amy's response was devastating. "I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. But I'm in a really good place right now and I don't want to bring any negative energy into my life." Rachel was crushed. Not because she'd been keeping a ledger of favors owed, but because the complete lack of empathy and reciprocity felt like a betrayal of everything she thought their friendship meant. Amy had genuinely forgotten how much Rachel had done for her, or at least, it no longer felt relevant to her current situation. The 6 months of intensive support had been erased from Amy's emotional memory bank. This is where the ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus provides crucial wisdom. He taught that some things are within our control and some things are not. The help you give is within your control. The gratitude, memory, and reciprocity of others is not. When you attach your sense of worth or satisfaction to outcomes you can't control, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and resentment. Epictetus knew this from personal experience. He was a slave for much of his life, which meant he regularly helped and served people who showed him no gratitude or recognition. He learned that finding meaning in the act of giving itself, rather than in the response of others, was the only sustainable path to inner peace. He wrote, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. In other words, be the kind of person who helps others because that's who you are, not because of what you expect to get back." Think of it like planting a tree. When you plant an oak tree in your yard, you're not doing it because you expect the tree to thank you or pay you back. You're doing it because you want to contribute something beautiful and lasting to the world. You understand that the tree might not survive, storms might knock it down, drought might kill it, disease might destroy it. But you plant it anyway because the act of planting aligns with your values and your vision for the kind of world you want to live in. Some of those trees will thrive and provide shade for generations. Others will die young. But if you only plant trees based on guaranteed outcomes, you'll never plant any trees at all, and the world will be a little less beautiful because of your fear. The same principle applies to human relationships and acts of kindness. When you help someone, you're planting a seed of goodness in the world. Some of those seeds will grow into lasting friendships and mutual support systems. Others will be forgotten or taken for granted. But if you only help people based on guaranteed reciprocity, you'll become isolated and cynical, and the world will be a little less kind because of your withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with senators who betrayed him and family members who caused him endless grief, wrote in his personal journal, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When people forget your help or fail to reciprocate, the Stoic response isn't to become like them, selfish, ungrateful, and transactional. The Stoic response is to continue being the kind of person you want to be while being wise about where you invest your time and energy. This means developing what psychologists call enlightened self-interest. You give because it makes you the kind of person you want to be, because it contributes to the kind of world you want to live in, and because it aligns with your deepest values. But you also pay attention to patterns. You notice which people consistently take without giving back, and you adjust your level of investment accordingly. You don't cut them off with anger or resentment. You simply redirect your energy toward people and causes that are more reciprocal and appreciative. The goal isn't to become calculating or transactional in your relationships. The goal is to become sustainable in your generosity. When you give with full awareness that reciprocity might not come, but without attachment to that outcome, you free yourself from the cycle of expectation and disappointment that destroys so many relationships. 3. Why people will keep taking until you say no. Meet Lisa, a project manager at a tech company in Denver. She's the person everyone goes to when they need something done right. It started innocently enough. She'd stay an extra hour to help a colleague finish a presentation, or she'd take on a small task that someone else was struggling with. Lisa felt good about being helpful, and her boss noticed her can-do attitude. But here's what happened over the next 6 months that will sound painfully familiar to anyone who's ever been the reliable person in their workplace. First, it was just covering for people when they were out sick. Then it became handling their urgent emails while they were on vacation. Then it escalated to Lisa essentially doing 2 jobs, her own and whatever overflow work nobody else wanted to tackle. The requests kept coming because Lisa kept saying yes. Her colleagues learned that if they brought their problems to Lisa, those problems would disappear. They didn't have to figure things out themselves, work late, or deal with difficult clients. Lisa would handle it. The breaking point came when Lisa's own project deadlines started slipping because she was too busy solving everyone else's problems. Instead of recognizing that she was overloaded, her boss actually questioned her time management skills. The very people she'd been helping for months suddenly acted like her assistance was something they were entitled to, not something she'd been generously providing. When she finally tried to set some boundaries, she was met with guilt trips. "But you always help us with this stuff, and I thought we could count on you." This is the insidious nature of unlimited requests. They don't start out unlimited. They start small and reasonable, then gradually expand until you're drowning in other people's responsibilities. It's like the old story about boiling a frog. If you put a frog in boiling water, it will jump out immediately. But if you put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, it will stay there until it's cooked. People don't usually start by asking you to completely sacrifice your own well-being for their convenience. They start by asking for small favors that seem perfectly reasonable. The psychology behind this is fascinating and disturbing. When you consistently say yes to requests, you're actually training people to see you as someone without boundaries. You're teaching them that your time, energy, and resources are available on demand. They begin to factor your availability into their own planning. Instead of figuring out how to handle their own challenges, they automatically think, "Oh, I'll just ask Lisa to deal with this." Consider the story that's been playing out in Atlanta for the past 3 years. Michael is a 35-year-old software engineer whose 28-year-old sister Jessica has never quite figured out how to be a functioning adult. It started when Jessica was in college and needed help with her car payments. Michael stepped in because he didn't want his sister to lose her transportation. Then it was help with rent when she was between jobs. Then it was co-signing for an apartment when her credit wasn't good enough. Then it was lending her money for a security deposit, then for furniture, then for groceries, then for her phone bill. Here's the crucial part. Jessica never actually learned to manage her own finances because Michael was always there to solve her problems. Every time she faced a consequence for her poor decisions, Michael swooped in to rescue her. He thought he was being a good brother, but he was actually enabling her to remain irresponsible. Jessica's requests kept escalating because she never had to face the natural consequences of her choices. Marcus Aurelius understood this dynamic perfectly when he wrote, "A man's job is to stand upright, not to be kept upright by others." He wasn't being cruel or heartless. He was recognizing that when you constantly prop other people up, you prevent them from developing their own strength and resilience. You rob them of the opportunity to grow and learn from their mistakes. The ancient Stoics observed that excessive help often creates dependency rather than genuine assistance. When you solve someone's problems for them repeatedly, you're not actually helping them become more capable, you're helping them become more helpless. This creates a vicious cycle where they need more and more help because they're not developing their own problem-solving skills. Seneca made this observation about relationships: he who begins to be your friend because of the benefit will also cease because of the benefit. In other words, people who are drawn to you primarily because of what you can do for them don't actually value you as a person, they value you as a resource. These relationships are fundamentally transactional, even if they're disguised as friendships or family obligations. This is exactly what happened to a woman named Patricia in Phoenix. Patricia worked in sales and was known for being incredibly generous with her time and connections. She'd make introductions for people, share leads, help colleagues prepare for presentations, and even let people use her office when theirs was being renovated. Patricia genuinely enjoyed helping people succeed, and she built what she thought were strong professional relationships based on mutual support. But when Patricia went through a difficult divorce and needed some emotional support and flexibility at work, she discovered something heartbreaking. The people she'd been helping for years suddenly became unavailable. They were too busy to listen when she needed to talk, too stressed to cover for her when she needed to leave early for lawyer meetings, and too focused on their own goals to return the favors she'd been providing for months. Patricia realized that she'd been surrounded by people who saw her as a vending machine: put in a request, get what you need, walk away. They'd never actually invested in her as a person because they'd never had to. She'd been so available, so accommodating, and so generous that they'd never learned to reciprocate or even appreciate what she was providing. The most painful part was that Patricia had trained them to treat her this way. By never setting boundaries, by always saying yes, by consistently prioritizing their needs over her own, she taught them that her time and energy were free and unlimited. She created a dynamic where they felt entitled to her help but not obligated to provide any support in return. The Stoics believed that how you allow others to treat you is a reflection of how you value yourself. When you consistently accept being taken advantage of, you're communicating that you don't believe you deserve better treatment. People pick up on this signal, often unconsciously, and adjust their behavior accordingly. The solution isn't to become cold or stop helping people entirely. The solution is to become strategic about your generosity. This means setting clear boundaries about what you will and won't do, being selective about who gets access to your time and resources, and being willing to let people face the natural consequences of their choices instead of constantly rescuing them. 4. Why being too nice makes you look weak. There's a fascinating paradox that happens in the corporate world of downtown Portland, and it's playing out right now in the offices of two marketing professionals who couldn't be more different. Meet Sarah and Jennifer, both talented, both hardworking, but with completely opposite approaches to workplace relationships. Sarah is the person everyone loves to work with. She never says no to overtime, always volunteers for the difficult projects nobody else wants, and constantly goes above and beyond to help her colleagues succeed. Jennifer, on the other hand, is polite but firm about her boundaries. She leaves the office at 5:30 sharp, declines requests that aren't part of her job description, and has a reputation for being professional but not particularly warm. Here's the twist that would make Marcus Aurelius nod in recognition. Jennifer just got promoted to senior manager, while Sarah is still in the same position she's held for 3 years, despite working twice as many hours and helping twice as many people. How is this possible? How does the person who helps everyone get passed over for the person who helps selectively? The answer lies in a brutal truth about human psychology that the Stoics understood centuries ago. When you make yourself too available, too accommodating, and too eager to please, people start to perceive you as lacking strength and leadership potential. This isn't fair, and it's not right, but it's how the human brain works. We unconsciously associate boundaries with strength and unlimited availability with weakness. Think about the most respected leaders you know. They're usually people who are generous with their time and expertise, but they're also selective about when and how they give it. They don't say yes to everything because they understand that their time and energy are valuable resources that need to be managed strategically. Sarah's problem wasn't that she was kind or helpful. Those are genuinely valuable qualities. Her problem was that her kindness came without discernment and her helpfulness came without boundaries. When you're always available for everyone else's emergencies, people start to assume that you don't have anything more important to do. When you consistently drop your own priorities to handle other people's urgent requests, you signal that your work isn't as valuable as theirs. When you never push back on unreasonable demands, you communicate that you don't respect your own time and energy enough to protect them. The ancient Stoic philosopher Cicero captured this perfectly when he wrote, "What you think of yourself is much more important than what others think of you." But here's the psychological twist: how you treat yourself actually influences how others think of you. When you consistently prioritize everyone else's needs over your own, you're sending a subconscious message that you don't value yourself very highly. Other people pick up on this signal and adjust their treatment of you accordingly. I know a guy named Marcus in Chicago who learned this lesson the hard way during his first few years as a software developer. Marcus was brilliant at coding, but he was also desperate to be liked by his teammates. He'd work weekends to fix other people's bugs, stay late to help colleagues who were struggling with their projects, and even bring coffee and donuts for the whole team every Friday. Marcus thought he was building strong relationships and proving his value to the company. Instead, something strange started happening. When important projects came up, Marcus wasn't chosen to lead them. When the team had technical discussions, his opinions weren't given much weight. When promotion time came around, he was passed over for colleagues who had done less work but were more assertive about their contributions. Marcus was confused and hurt. He'd been the most helpful person on the team, so why wasn't he being recognized or rewarded? The problem was that Marcus had accidentally positioned himself as a support player rather than a leader. By always being available to solve other people's problems, he created an image of himself as someone who was useful but not essential, helpful but not influential. His colleagues had started to see him as a resource they could use rather than a peer they needed to respect. His excessive niceness had actually undermined his professional credibility. This dynamic plays out in personal relationships too. Consider what happened to a woman named Lisa in Miami who was known among her friend group as the person who would drop everything to help with any crisis. When someone needed a ride to the airport at 5 a.m., Lisa was there. When someone needed help moving apartments, Lisa showed up with a truck. When someone needed emotional support during a breakup, Lisa was available for hours-long phone calls. She genuinely cared about her friends and wanted to be there for them. But here's what Lisa noticed over time: she was always the one being called for help, but she was rarely the one being invited to celebrations. Her friends would reach out when they needed something, but when it came time for birthday parties, weekend trips, or fun social events, Lisa often found out about them through social media after the fact. She'd become the emergency contact friend rather than the fun friend, and it was because her pattern of always being available for crises had created an association in people's minds between Lisa and problems rather than Lisa and good times. The Stoics understood that respect is earned through a combination of competence and boundaries. When you demonstrate that you can help others but choose when and how to do so, you create an aura of strength and discernment. When you help everyone with everything all the time, you create an impression of someone who lacks the judgment to prioritize effectively or the backbone to say no when necessary. Marcus Aurelius, who had to balance being a compassionate leader with maintaining the respect necessary to rule an empire, wrote about this balance extensively. He understood that true strength comes from being able to help others while also maintaining your own integrity and boundaries. He knew that people respect leaders who are generous but selective, kind but firm, helpful but not desperate to please. The transformation happens when you start viewing your time, energy, and expertise as valuable resources that deserve to be invested wisely rather than given away indiscriminately. When you begin setting boundaries not out of selfishness but out of self-respect, people start treating you differently. They begin to see you as someone who values themselves appropriately, which makes them value you more highly as well. To deal with the 4 above hidden dangers, you need some strategies. Strategy 1. How to stop being afraid to say no. The fear of saying no runs deeper than most people realize. It's not just about being polite or helpful, it's about a fundamental terror that saying no will make people reject us, abandon us, or think we're bad people. This fear usually starts in childhood when we learn that being good means always agreeing, always helping, always putting others first. We got praised for being the easy kid, the one who never caused problems, the one who always said yes. But what worked when we were 7 years old is destroying our lives as adults. Take James, a 32-year-old accountant in Austin who literally broke out in a sweat every time he had to decline a request. His heart would race, his palms would get clammy, and he'd feel physically sick at the thought of disappointing someone. This wasn't just politeness, this was a genuine phobia that was controlling his entire life. James would say yes to working weekends, yes to lending money he couldn't afford to lose, yes to social events he had no interest in attending, all because the alternative felt like emotional death. The Stoics understood that most of our fears are based on outdated programming that no longer serves us. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about examining our automatic reactions and choosing our responses based on wisdom rather than childhood conditioning. The first step in overcoming the fear of saying no is recognizing that this fear is not protecting you, it's imprisoning you. Here's the reality check that changed James's life. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. The people who get angry, manipulative, or punishing when you say no are revealing something important about their character, not yours. They're showing you that they value what you can do for them more than they value you as a person. This information is actually a gift because it helps you identify who deserves your time and energy. Start small with your no practice. Don't begin by declining your boss's request for overtime or your mother's demand that you host Thanksgiving dinner. Start with low-stakes situations where the consequences are minimal. When the barista asks if you want to add a muffin to your order, practice saying no, thank you instead of automatically agreeing. When a store clerk asks for your email address, practice declining politely but firmly. The key is to make saying no feel normal and natural rather than catastrophic. Every time you practice declining something small, you're building the neural pathways that will make it easier to say no to bigger requests later. You're literally rewiring your brain to see boundaries as normal and healthy rather than selfish and dangerous. Remember that saying no to one thing means saying yes to something else. When you decline that extra project at work, you're saying yes to having dinner with your family. When you turn down that social obligation you don't want to attend, you're saying yes to the rest and relaxation you actually need. Frame your no says yes to the things that truly matter to you. The Stoics taught that we become what we practice. If you practice being afraid of disappointing people, you'll become someone who lives in constant fear of other people's reactions. But if you practice setting boundaries with kindness and confidence, you'll become someone who commands respect while still being genuinely helpful and caring. Strategy 2. The warning signs you're giving too much. Recognizing the signs that you're giving too much can be challenging, especially when you genuinely want to help. However, maintaining healthy boundaries is crucial for your well-being and the quality of your relationships. Here are some key warning signs that indicate you may be overextending yourself. 1. You often feel resentful. If you find yourself feeling resentful toward the people you're helping, it's a clear sign you're giving too much. This resentment often stems from feeling unappreciated or overburdened. When you help others out of obligation rather than genuine desire, it can lead to bitterness. Take a moment to reflect. Do you feel drained after helping someone? If so, it might be time to reassess your commitments. 2. Your own needs are ignored. Are you consistently putting others' needs ahead of your own? If you find that your own responsibilities, hobbies, or self-care are constantly sidelined for the sake of someone else's demands, it's a strong indication that you're giving too much. The Stoics emphasized the importance of self-care. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Prioritize your own needs to be able to support others effectively. 3. You regularly feel overwhelmed. If you frequently feel overwhelmed by your commitments, you might be taking on too much. This could manifest as stress, anxiety, or physical exhaustion. When your to-do list is overflowing because you keep saying yes to every request, it's time to evaluate what's truly necessary. Creating a manageable schedule is essential for maintaining balance. 4. You're not being invited to social events. If you notice that you're often left out of social gatherings or celebrations, it may be a sign that people see you primarily as a helper rather than a friend. When your identity revolves around being the go-to person for help, others may unintentionally overlook your need for companionship. Ensure you're also making time for relationships that nurture you, not just those that require your support. 5. You feel unappreciated. Feeling unappreciated can be a significant red flag. If you frequently feel that your efforts to help are taken for granted, it's essential to address this. Communication is key. Let people know how their lack of recognition affects you. If they continue to overlook your contributions, it might be time to reconsider the nature of those relationships. 6. You have trouble saying no. If you struggle to say no, even when you know you should, this is a critical sign you're giving too much. This fear often stems from a desire to be liked or accepted. Practice asserting yourself in small ways. Start with less significant requests and gradually work up to more important ones. Remember, saying no is not a reflection of your worth. It's a necessary skill for maintaining balance. 7. Your health is suffering. Finally, if your physical or mental health is suffering due to your commitments, it's time to take action. Chronic stress, anxiety, and burnout can have serious consequences on both your body and mind. Check in with yourself regularly. Are you getting enough sleep, eating well, and engaging in activities you enjoy? If not, it's crucial to make adjustments to your giving habits. Recognizing these warning signs is the first step toward reclaiming your time and energy. By becoming aware of how much you're giving, you can start to establish healthier boundaries that allow you to support others while also taking care of yourself. Remember, your well-being is just as important as the needs of those around you. Strategy 3. Why you need to put yourself first without guilt. In a world that often glorifies self-sacrifice and martyrdom, the notion of putting yourself first can feel uncomfortable or even selfish. Many people mistakenly believe that prioritizing their own needs means they are neglecting others. However, the Stoic philosophers taught us that self-care is not only essential for our well-being but also for our ability to genuinely help those around us. Understanding self-prioritization. Putting yourself first means recognizing that your needs, health, and happiness are as important as anyone else's. When you prioritize your well-being, you create a solid foundation from which to support others. Imagine trying to help others while you're running on empty. You'll likely end up feeling resentful, overwhelmed, and burnt out, which ultimately diminishes your ability to provide genuine assistance. The importance of self-care. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Engaging in activities that replenish your energy, whether it's exercising, meditating, pursuing hobbies, or simply taking time to relax, is vital for maintaining your physical and mental health. When you take care of yourself, you enhance your capacity to be present and supportive for others. Think of it as a battery. You can't help others charge their devices if your own battery is dead. Letting go of guilt? One of the biggest challenges in putting yourself first is the guilt that often accompanies it. You might worry that taking time for your own needs will disappoint others or make you seem selfish. However, it's important to reframe this mindset. Recognize that your friends and family want you to be healthy and happy. By taking care of yourself, you show them how to live more balanced and fulfilling lives. To combat guilt, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that everyone deserves to prioritize their needs, including you. When you feel the guilt creeping in, ask yourself, would I think less of a friend for taking time for themselves? The answer is likely no. You would encourage them to do so. Extend that same kindness to yourself. Setting boundaries. Putting yourself first also means establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries. This can feel daunting, especially if you're used to being the go-to person for everyone's needs. Start small. Communicate clearly about your limits and practice saying no when necessary. This doesn't mean you have to be harsh or dismissive. You can decline requests politely but firmly. For example, instead of saying, I can't help, you might say, I'm unable to take that on right now, but thank you for thinking of me. Building a supportive community. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries and encourage your self-care. A supportive community will help reinforce the idea that it's okay to prioritize yourself. Engage with friends who understand that everyone has limits and can share in the joy of self-care. This will help you feel less guilty about taking time for yourself and more empowered to set those boundaries. In summary, putting yourself first is not selfish, it's essential. By prioritizing your needs, you enhance your ability to support others effectively. Remember that self-care is a fundamental aspect of a balanced life. Let go of guilt, establish boundaries, and foster a supportive community that encourages mutual respect. When you take care of yourself, you not only enrich your own life but also become a more compassionate and effective friend, family member, and colleague. Strategy 4. How to spot people who only take from you. Navigating relationships can be difficult, especially when it comes to recognizing those who take advantage of your kindness. Understanding the signs that someone is a taker rather than a genuine friend is essential for maintaining healthy boundaries and protecting your well-being. Here are some key indicators to help you identify those who may be draining your energy and resources without giving back. 1. They only reach out when they need something. One of the clearest signs that someone is a taker is their pattern of communication. If you notice that a friend or colleague only contacts you during crises or when they need a favor, it's a red flag. Genuine relationships are reciprocal. They involve mutual support and care. If someone consistently disappears when things are going well but reappears during tough times, it indicates a transactional relationship more than a true friendship. 2. They don't show appreciation. Another significant sign is the lack of gratitude. If you find that your efforts go unacknowledged or unappreciated, it's time to reevaluate the relationship. While not everyone expresses thanks in the same way, a consistent absence of gratitude can signal that the person might not value your contributions. Healthy relationships involve recognizing and appreciating each other's efforts, so take note if you feel taken for granted. 3. They make you feel guilty for saying no. Takers often manipulate situations to make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. If you notice that someone reacts negatively or tries to guilt-trip you when you decline a request, it's a sign that they may not have your best interests at heart. Healthy relationships should allow for open communication and respect for each other's limits without emotional manipulation. 4. They don't offer help in return. Observe whether the person ever reciprocates when you need assistance. Are they quick to take up your time and energy but slow to offer help when you're in need? A friendship or relationship should have a balance of give and take. If you find yourself always giving and never receiving support, it could be time to reassess the dynamics at play. 5. They take advantage of your kindness. If someone frequently asks for more than what feels reasonable, they may be a taker. This could be in the form of asking for favors that require significant time or effort on your part, or repeatedly leaning on you for emotional support without considering your own needs. Recognize when your kindness is being exploited. It's essential to establish limits. 6. They use flattery to manipulate. Takers may employ excessive flattery to keep you in their good graces. While compliments can be sincere, if someone is constantly praising you to get something they want, it could be a tactic to manipulate you. Be wary of people who shower you with compliments only when they need a favor. 7. You feel drained after interactions. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. If you consistently leave interactions feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or resentful, it's a clear signal that the relationship may be unhealthy. Your energy should be uplifted by friendships, not depleted. Identifying takers in your life is crucial for maintaining your well-being and nurturing healthy relationships. By recognizing these warning signs, such as one-sided communication, lack of appreciation, emotional manipulation, and feelings of depletion, you can protect your time and energy. Remember that it's okay to set boundaries and prioritize relationships that are mutually supportive and enriching. Surround yourself with people who respect you and contribute positively to your life, ensuring that the connections you maintain are both fulfilling and reciprocal. How to be kind without losing yourself. In the journey of life, balancing kindness with self-preservation is a fundamental lesson that the Stoics emphasized. As we have explored throughout this video, the act of helping others is noble, but it should never come at the expense of our own well-being. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca wisely stated, "No man was ever wise by chance." This reinforces the idea that wisdom requires intention and reflection, especially when it comes to how we engage with others, balancing kindness and self-care. To be truly kind, we must first be kind to ourselves. This means recognizing our limits and understanding that it's okay to say no without guilt. Each time we prioritize our health, happiness, and peace of mind, we build a stronger foundation from which to help others. Think of it like maintaining a garden. If you neglect your own garden, it will wither and become barren, leaving you with nothing to share. Conversely, a well-tended garden not only thrives but also produces an abundance that can be shared with others. Recognizing your value. Understanding your worth is essential in this process. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This speaks directly to the importance of valuing yourself. When you recognize that your time and energy are precious resources, you'll be less likely to allow others to deplete them. A practical example is setting boundaries at work. If your boss asks you to take on an additional project and you're already overwhelmed, it's perfectly acceptable to explain your current workload and suggest a more feasible timeline. Moreover, practicing self-reflection can help you gauge your emotional state. After an interaction or a day of helping others, ask yourself, did I feel energized or drained? If it's the latter, it might be time to reassess your commitments and consider where you might need to pull back. Building a supportive network. Surrounding yourself with the right people is crucial. Seek reciprocal relationships where both parties feel valued and supported. A good friend will encourage you to take time for yourself, just as you would do for them. The Stoics believed in the importance of community, stating that we are more like them than we are unlike them. This means that by fostering mutual respect and understanding, we create a network that uplifts everyone involved. As we conclude, remember that being kind doesn't mean sacrificing your own needs. It's about fostering healthy relationships where you can support others while also taking care of yourself. Start implementing the strategies we discussed today. Set boundaries, practice saying no, and engage in self-care without guilt. If you found value in this discussion and want to explore more about Stoic philosophy and how it can transform your life, be sure to subscribe to the STOIC VIVU channel. Hit that like button and share this video with friends and family who might also benefit from these insights. Together, let's build a community that embraces the wisdom of Stoicism, promoting kindness while ensuring we all thrive. Thank you for joining us on this journey towards balanced living. Remember, true strength comes from knowing when to give and when to care for yourself. Stay wise, stay kind, and see you in the next video.